Thank you very much, Professor Marmot, for being with us this afternoon in this meeting in honor of Giovanni Berlinguer. On behalf of the organizers of the meeting and on behalf of Giovanni Berlinguer family, which is here, I wish to thank you heartily for your participation. Before leaving you the talk, I would like just to summarize some point about the importance that you had in Giovanni Berlinguer's life, and I switch to Italian for a few minutes. Sir Michael Marmot è professore di epidemiologia e sanità pubblica presso l'University College di Londra e attualmente direttore del UCL Institute of Health Equity. Visto che siamo molto legati alle statistiche e alle pubblicazioni, Sir Marmot con più di 220.000 citazioni è fra i 50 autori al mondo più citati per i suoi contributi giustamente sui problemi dell'equità in salute. Sir Marmot ha presieduto, come è stato ricordato anche ieri, la commissione dell'OMS sui determinanti sociali della salute fra il 2005 e il 2008, in cui Giovanni era presente non solo per rappresentare l'Italia, ma ovviamente come riconoscimento dei suoi contributi. È stato presidente della British Medical Association e della World Medical Association. Sir Michael Marmot è certamente il massimo esperto mondiale sui problemi dell'equità in salute e il suo impegno è al tempo stesso teorico e pratico a favore della prevenzione e della sanità pubblica. Uno degli slogan che trovate nei suoi scritti è che la maggior parte delle cose che i dottori curano sono il risultato del fallimento della prevenzione, e questo dice tutto su come muoversi. Come Giovanni Berlinguer, oltre all'elaborazione politica, Sir Michael Marmot sviluppa una grande attività pratica di indirizzo, di guidelines, e in particolare ha scritto quella che si chiama la Marmot Review, che indica cosa si deve fare per avere dei determinanti sociali positivi per la salute. E attualmente ci sono molte città inglesi che applicano queste guideline e in questo modo ottengono la denominazione Marmot Cities, cioè come quando ci sono le città non nucleari, così in Inghilterra ci sono anche le Marmot City che applicano le guideline stabiliti. Speriamo che anche Roma prima o poi possa diventare una Sir Marmot City. I'm switch now to English. Thank you once again. I leave you the possibility to talk to the professor. Thank you very much, Sir Michael.
Thank you very much. And I'm so pleased to be able to contribute to this meeting, even if I can't be with you in person. Giovanni was a most important person to me. He was a member of, as you heard in the introduction, of the World Health Organization Commission on Social Determinants of Health. And he, as those of you who know him will know, that Giovanni always had a twinkle in his eye. And he was, of course, a very serious person, but he had the most delightful sense of humor and the most gentle approach to presenting really serious arguments. He influenced me enormously, influenced our commission. So I'm going to say a few words about the WHO Commission, but then I want to talk about what happened since, so which Giovanni clearly was a part of. The opening line of my book, The Health Gap, in Italy, Salute inuguale, it was published in Italian, was why treat people and send them back to the conditions that made them sick. Of course, particularly at the time of a pandemic, we think a great deal about the healthcare system. But my concern, and the concern of our Commission on Social Determinants of Health, was with the conditions that make people sick. a brief timeline. 1948, WHO was founded and was also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And when we launched the WHO Commission in Santiago de Chile in 2005, the then Director General of WHO, J.W. Lee, said the Commission will report in 2008, which is 60 years after the founding of WHO, 30 years after Alma Ata. And he said, we're looking for a similar ringing declaration from the Commission on Social Determinants of Health. We said on the cover of the report, social injustice is killing on a grand scale. We said that inequities in power, money, and resources give rise to inequities in the conditions of daily life. And we put empowerment at the heart of what we were trying to achieve. And we said it has three components. Material. If you can't afford to feed your children, you cannot be empowered. Psychosocial, having control over your life, agency. And political, having voice. And we said we wanted to create the conditions for people to lead flourishing lives. As you heard in the introduction, following the WHO Commission, I was invited by the British government to conduct a review, the Marmot Review, which we published as Fair Society, Healthy Lives. And in 2020, we published Health Equity in England, the Marmot Review 10 years on. And then I was invited by the European Regional Office of WHO to lead the review of social determinants and the health divide in the WHO European region. Since then, we've done a review for PAHO and one for North Africa and the Middle East. And this was the conceptual framework of the Commission. The outcome is distribution of health and well-being. We looked at material circumstances, social cohesion, psychosocial factors, behaviors, biological factors, and of course, the healthcare system. But these are distributed unequally in society when people are classified according to education, occupation, income, gender, ethnicity, and race. And these, in turn, are influenced by what we call the structural drivers, the socioeconomic and political context, governance, policy, macroeconomic influence, social health, cultural and societal norms and values. And this is what we called the social determinants of health and health inequities. One can intervene here, one can intervene there, and one can intervene here. And we said social injustice is killing people on a grand scale. In my PAHO commission, I quoted Nelson Mandela, "Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It's an act of justice. It's the protection of fundamental human rights, the right to dignity and a decent life." In my English review, Fair Society, Healthy Lives, I coined the term proportionate universalism. I was trying to combine two ideas. The default position of British social policy is you target the worst off, means tested benefits. A more Nordic or Dutch approach is you have universalist policies that involve everybody. The idea of a healthcare system for the poor is a poor healthcare system, and an education system for the poor is a poor education system. So let's have universalist policies, but with effort proportionate to need. We could call it leveling up. So health follows a social gradient, that's what we've observed. If this is, say, less deprivation, and this is life expectancy, the less the deprivation, the longer the life expectancy. And what we want to do is level up. So we said, if you target the worst off, you may indeed improve their health. But what about these people who are above the threshold of intervention, but still have worse health than those above them? So we said, universalist policies with effort proportionate to need, proportionate universalism. In Britain, after 2010, the Conservative-led coalition government had a policy of austerity, rolling back the state. This was how they dealt with my proposal for proportionate universalism. The grey bars are total local authority spending per person. And in the least deprived 20% of areas, the spending per person went down by 17%. And then the greater the deprivation, the greater the reduction in spending. In the most deprived, it went down by 32%. What we've got here is effort inversely proportionate to need. The greater the deprivation, the greater the need. The greater the need, the greater the reduction in spending. This could well be the explanation why post-2010 health stopped improving in the UK. Health inequalities increased, and life expectancy and ill health for the poorest people got worse. If we look globally, trends in gross national income per person, high-income countries go back to 1990. Yes, of course, there were major, this is international dollars adjusting for purchasing power. Of course, there were major differences in per capita income between the high-income countries and the low-income countries, and that got dramatically bigger after the global financial crisis. Actually, the global financial crisis was quite good for rich people. And you can see the enormous differences that now exist, much bigger than back in 1990. And this will, of course, have implications for the social determinants of health and for health. We're used to thinking about poverty and ill health. But look at these figures from the Financial Times, comparing Switzerland, the grey bar, the United States. The UK is the red, Norway and Slovenia. If you look at the 90th centile of income, it's adjusting for purchasing power. If you look at the 90th centile, so people 10% from the top, then the UK and Norway are about the same. Our rich people in the UK are about as rich as in Norway, but a bit less rich than in the US and Switzerland. Now look at the median, the 50th centile. The UK is way behind Norway and Switzerland. The US has dropped back somewhat compared with Switzerland, but the middle of the distribution is much lower in the UK than in Norway. Now look at the 10th centile from the bottom. The UK is way behind Norway. Norway is up there with Switzerland. The US has dropped, and Slovenia. The bottom 10% in Slovenia are richer than the bottom 10% in the UK and the United States. The reason I'm showing you this is that the UK is a poor country with some rich people. If you think about inequalities in health only as the poor health of the poor, you're missing the fact that we're actually a poor country with a few rich people. And that's why we've got to deal with the whole gradient. And if you look at the Gini coefficient of disposable income, a measure of income inequality for the rich OECD countries, the Slovak Republic, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Belgium, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Austria. There's Italy, fairly high. There's the UK, and there's the US, nearly as high as Turkey, Mexico, Costa Rica. This matters. It matters because of its impact on the whole distribution. And what about health? Well, if we look globally, the European Union, good life expectancy, back in 1990, we were talking about life expectancy of 50 in sub-Saharan Africa and 75 in the European Union. We're up at 80 in the European Union. So the gap has closed. It's 60, there's 20-year gap. It's not as big as it was, but it's still huge. And in the other regions too. We have a long way to go. I'm particularly concerned with intergenerational equity, the next generation, equity between the generations. The Gallup organization does a poll and it says, do you think children today will have a better, a worse off, or roughly the same life to you? In all of these European countries, Slovenia, Sweden, France, Hungary, UK. So look at the UK. Only a third, fewer than a third of adults think their children will have a better life than them. 26% say a worse life, 28% roughly the same. My goodness, think about the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, their parents, if they were asked, will your children have a better life than you? They would have said yes, and they were right. They wouldn't grow up in the same poverty. They get more education, have better health, more opportunities. But now you ask adults, only a third think their children will have a better life than them. And they're probably right. Look at social mobility. One way of looking at social mobility is to ask, how many generations does it take to go from a low income, the bottom 10%, to the median? So if you're in Denmark, at the current rate of social mobility, so think about this, rich parents have rich children when they're adults, poor parents have poor children when they're adults, middle level have middle level in general. Can you buck that trend? If you've got poor parents, can you be upwardly mobile? Well, at the current rate of social mobility, it would take 2 generations in Denmark, 3 generations in Finland, Norway, or Sweden. The OECD average is 4.5. It would take 5 generations in the UK, Italy, and the United States, and 9 generations in Brazil. Why such differences? 2 big reasons. One, the magnitude of income inequality matters. The bigger the inequality, the greater the difficulty for the next generation to get from one rung on the ladder to the next. And I showed you that UK, Italy, and the United States have relatively high income inequality, but not as high as Brazil, which is much higher. And the second is investment in early childhood. I showed a version of this to a collection, 53 member states of the European region. And I said, colleagues, where would you like to be? Denmark or Brazil? And I can tell you, we're heading towards Brazil. We're not heading towards Denmark because of increased income inequality and failure to invest in the next generation. Look at child poverty rates defined as less than 60% median income. The UK, Italy, US, Colombia. Staggeringly high, and this will have a big impact on the prospects for our children. And if we look at changes, the government in the UK likes to boast that it's reduced child poverty. No, it hasn't. The UK has had the biggest increase in child poverty among 39 countries. In Italy, it hasn't changed much, relatively high, but it hasn't changed much. Poland, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, big reductions. But look at the increase. Well-being scores, 2015, 2018, 2022, among 15-year-olds. Finland always does best on well-being. They may not look like it, but the Finns are the happiest. They always top the happiness index and well-being of 15-year-olds. But even in Finland, it decreased between 2015 and 2022. The UK, we don't do very well. Italy, you too have got a decrease in well-being scores at 15 years old. This is all pretty depressing. Bernardino, in his introduction of me, I heard him mention Marmot cities. And I'm going to show you one effect of the commission, the WHO commission published in 2008. And this was articles in PubMed on social determinants of health. Wow. The scientific literature has taken this on board. I'm co-chairing a global council on inequalities, AIDS, and pandemics. I'm sitting here with Winnie Byanyima, the executive director of UNAIDS, and we launched it in Brazil. And then, as Bernardino said, we have these Marmot places in England and Wales. Coventry was the first Marmot city, Greater Manchester, Bilbek Fair in Greater Manchester, Cheshire and Merseyside, Liverpool is part of Cheshire and Merseyside, Lancashire and Cumbria, Luton, the London borough of Waltham Forest, and many others are following. And business involved, Legal and General, is a huge financial services corporation. They have 1.3 trillion pounds under investment. Big deal. And they approached us and said, we want to know what business can do on health equity. So we produced the Business of Health Equity, the Marmot Review for Industry. We said 3 areas: good quality work, pay and conditions, products and services, so to benefit clients and customers, and wider impact on the environment, the community, and the like. They said social justice and better business. You get a healthier and more productive workforce, staff retention, better recruitment, attracting consumers, and attracting investors. We're working with the East London Foundation Trust, a healthcare trust, and one of the public health doctors, he called it the Marmot Mountain, said, hey, we could adopt the Marmot Review for Industry, and with principle of proportionate universalism, universal and targeted. At the East London Foundation Trust as a training and employment provider, thinking about our service users, the people who come for healthcare, and the impact on the wider Luton community, the environment, hiring, procurement, and the like. It's very encouraging. We've not been getting much action at the national level in Britain. but we're getting real action at the local level. I will be back in Rome in May. We're talking about the possibility of Marmot cities in Italy. You know, when we launched the WHO Commission, I said in Santiago, Chile, I quoted Martin Luther King, his famous speech, I have a dream that on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will sit down together at the table of brotherhood. And then I said to my colleagues, can you imagine if instead of I have a dream, Martin Luther King got up and said, I have a 9-point action plan. And Giovanni thought about that. And at our next meeting, he came back and he said, you know, you can dream a plan, but you can't plan a dream. And I said at the time, I was really charmed by this observation of Giovanni's. And I said at the time that I felt like Don Quixote, that I'd woken up, imagined that I was a knight running around the world trying to do chivalrous deeds, and everybody was laughing. And I said as much to a Spanish minister of health. And he said, he said, remember Sancho Panza. We need, he said, the ideology of Don Quixote, the dreamer, but we need the pragmatism of Sancho Panza. So I would say, building on the vision and the work of Giovanni Berlinguer, we need to dream of a fairer world and take the practical steps to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Michael, for your presentation. And I really, on behalf of the audience and the Giovanni Berlinguer family, we thank you very much. We hope to see you in person in Rome in next month. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.